Here's a Hollywood decision that could have changed superhero cinema forever, and it involves one of the most controversial career choices Will Smith ever made. After enduring over 10 years of Zack Snyder's notoriously dark and brooding take on DC heroes, James Gunn's vibrant new Superman film has finally restored the joy and wonder that fans have been desperately craving. This latest incarnation marks the 7th live-action Superman movie, excluding the 1940s serials and ensemble pieces where the Man of Steel played second fiddle. And while it may never achieve the iconic status of Richard Donner's groundbreaking 1978 masterpiece, Gunn has at least delivered a fresh perspective on the beloved character. But here's where it gets controversial. We could have had a completely different Superman legacy if one major star hadn't walked away from what might have been the most groundbreaking casting decision in superhero history. Let's rewind to 2006's Superman Returns, a film that has become something of a forgotten middle child in the Superman family. Director Bryan Singer crafted what was essentially a love letter to the Donner-Christopher Reeve era, going so far as to position it as a direct continuation of 1980's Superman 2. While Returns certainly isn't the worst Superman film ever made, trust me, that's a low bar. And despite Singer's tendency to lean heavily into the Christ-like symbolism that made some viewers roll their eyes, the movie delivered genuinely spectacular action sequences and showcased Brandon Routh's surprisingly solid performance as the last son of Krypton. The tragedy of Superman Returns wasn't that it flopped. Quite the opposite, actually. The film soared to $391 million worldwide, which represented a respectable haul for its time. The real kryptonite? An absolutely staggering production budget of $232 million that essentially guaranteed Warner Brothers would see little to no profit. When key players began abandoning ship during sequel preparations, the entire project crumbled like a house of cards, eventually paving the way for Zack Snyder's controversial Man of Steel reboot in 2013, a direction that reportedly left original Superman director Richard Donner less than thrilled. Meanwhile, Brandon Routh, who seemed destined for A-list stardom, gradually faded from the spotlight in the years that followed. And this is the part most people miss. The film might have had an entirely different fate if Will Smith hadn't made what could be considered either his smartest or most short-sighted career decision. Will Smith's relationship with missed opportunities has become the stuff of Hollywood legend. And frankly, it's getting harder to defend some of his choices. Anyone who's witnessed his post-Oscar slap career trajectory and those eyebrow-raising recent musical ventures has probably found themselves wondering, what exactly is going on with Will Smith? But his talent for passing on billion-dollar franchises goes way back. The man famously rejected the role of Neo in The Matrix, only to create an absolutely cringe-worthy music video 25 years later, where he digitally inserted himself back into the story. Another one of those is Will Smith having a breakdown moments that keep us all concerned. He also walked away from Christopher Nolan's mind-bending Inception because he supposedly didn't get it, and nearly said no to Men in Black until Steven Spielberg literally sent a helicopter to change his mind. So when it comes to rejecting future blockbusters, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air legend has practically turned it into an art form. But his reasoning for turning down Superman reveals something much deeper and more complex about Hollywood's racial dynamics. Speaking candidly to MTV News in 2008, Smith delivered a quote that should have sparked more industry soul-searching than it actually did. "The last Superman I got offered, the script came, and I was like, there is no way I'm playing Superman. because I had already done Jim West of Wild Wild West. And you can't be messing up white people's heroes in Hollywood. You mess up white people's heroes in Hollywood, you'll never work in this town again. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, Smith's assessment of Wild Wild West being a disaster solely because he messed up white people's heroes might be overly simplistic, though there's definitely more truth to it than Hollywood would like to admit. The 1999 Western steampunk hybrid was indeed a critical and commercial catastrophe, but the problems ran much deeper than casting choices. The film was adapting the 1960s TV series The Wild Wild West, and director Barry Sonnenfeld revealed in his memoir, Best Possible Place, Worst Possible Time, that original series star Robert Conrad actually made violent threats when he learned a black actor might play Jim West. So Smith's concerns weren't entirely unfounded. But the movie's real issues included zero chemistry between Smith and Kevin Kline, plus what the New Yorker's Terrence Rafferty brutally described as being utterly without feeling and pointless. But here's the million-dollar question that should keep every film executive awake at night. What if Will Smith had said yes to Superman? It's impossible to know definitively how Superman Returns would have performed with Smith in the cape instead of Brandon Routh. In some ways, his instincts were spot on. Returns may not be a Wild Wild West level disaster, but it has largely been forgotten by mainstream audiences, which wouldn't have been ideal for a star of Smith's caliber, recent controversies aside. However, and this is where it gets really interesting, Smith's involvement could have fundamentally altered the entire trajectory of superhero cinema. Picture this: the biggest movie star in the world, at the peak of his powers, becoming the first black actor to portray Superman on the big screen. The cultural impact alone would have been seismic. Smith's massive star power would have undoubtedly drawn larger audiences, potentially pushing the box office numbers high enough to justify that ridiculous budget and secure the sequel that never materialized. We might be living in a completely different DC universe right now. The cruel irony? We've been tantalizingly close to seeing a black Superman multiple times since then. Two separate projects were in development: a J.J. Abrams-produced film written by Ta-Nehisi Coates and an HBO Max series featuring Michael B. Jordan. Former Superman actor Henry Cavill even gave his enthusiastic blessing to these black Superman projects, emphasizing that the character represents far more than skin color. Yet neither project has materialized, and with James Gunn now steering the DC ship alongside producer Peter Safran into their new unified universe, it seems increasingly unlikely that either will ever see the light of day. That makes Smith's decision even more significant in hindsight. Had he taken that leap of faith with Superman Returns, he wouldn't just have potentially saved a forgotten film. He would have made history and transformed Returns from a solid but forgettable entry into a groundbreaking moment that could have changed Hollywood forever. So here's the controversial question I'm throwing out there. Was Will Smith's decision to turn down Superman a smart career move or the biggest missed opportunity in superhero cinema history? And more provocatively, do you think Hollywood's resistance to a black Superman says more about the industry's limitations or audience expectations? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because this is exactly the kind of casting conversation that needs to happen more often in Hollywood boardrooms.